So it begins.
So it begins.
Good morning.
Good morning. I will be turning off my mic for just a moment as I get a couple of things set up.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Good morning. Good morning. How are we all doing this morning?
Doing okay. I decided I had to make some compromises and make my map a little simpler.
My map's very confusing. It's gone all over the place, but I'm keeping it that way.
Go for it.
Probably.
So I'm attempting to make a sci-fi palette, and there's a set of cell bars. Man, these things are huge. It takes up so much space.
I have a couple of questions. Is there any way to delete a square or an object when after you place it?
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways. And Art, yeah, your screen reader. It's easier that way. If you know the actual name of the object, you can navigate to the Scene tab where you've got Project Scene Palette. If mine will show up today. Mine's not showing up today. Okay. So in there, I promise, it has something will say items. It'll be a tree that'll say items. You can open that, and every single thing you've placed in the scene will pop up. You can just be highlighted on it. You don't have to hit enter or space or anything, and just hit the delete key, and that item will be removed from your scene. So
first in the scene, navigate to the object I want to remove, make note of its name.
Then, now, if you're already in the scene, you can delete it right there.
With what?
Select it by hitting enter, and then just hit the delete key, and it should delete it.
I tried the delete key by itself, and nothing happened. So
you have to select it first.
Okay, because I made a mistake, and in my mind, I wanted something with like a upper right corner, having something different, and I put an upper left corner in its place.
Yep. No, I did that a lot yesterday too. But that's how you delete things.
So press enter first, then I can do a delete key. Now another thing happened to me. I started putting objects along the bottom edge, and I heard the numbers going up, which made sense. You know, as object 1, object 2, object 3. Later on, I came back and at a different point in time, I started putting objects up the left edge, and it started calling them 1, 2, and 3 again. Is that normal?
If it's the same object, so if it's dirt, whether you put it in yesterday or next week, it should continue to count up because they're variable names. And so it like.
That's what I thought. At the moment, I'm afraid I might have 2 grass 1s and 2 grass 2s.
That's a William question, and he's pondering. I can see the pondering thought right now.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it should count up as you're placing more things, but if you had closed and restarted the environment, it's possible it's not saving that correctly. I'll have to go check that.
Okay. Yeah, because I went back, you know, I did I said, oh, I should put more of these over here. So I went back and I was really caught off guard when I heard the numbers repeating, but I said, well, maybe because I'm on a different
phone. You can also manually rename them.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of work.
I would not go and manually rename all of those unless you like need those numbers to be different for some reason. It won't like hurt anything in the game if there are 2 grass ones.
Okay, good. They're on a border, so I'm thinking it'll never be an issue.
Yeah. Like if you want to, for some reason, interact with grass 1, and you have 2 grass 1s, you might have an issue. But if you're never going to specifically make that grass do a thing, it's fine.
That's what I'm anticipating.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. This game stuff is totally new to me. I have no plan, no concept. I'm just trying to muddle along here. So
You know what? Your game will probably be the most artistically great.
No plan and no concept. That sounds like all of programming. I think you're welcome here. I think that works.
I keep telling Art that he is right on line with the rest of us, but I don't think he believes me.
I think you're trying to make me feel good.
Oh, Art, you just don't know me well enough. I don't give out like frivolous compliments. I will tell you that you're a dumb sack of poo if you're a dumb sack of poo.
That's good.
Which you're not.
the way it
So
should be.
you're good.
The truth
For
is that-
some reason, I've put an ogre in the origin 0, 0. I don't know what came over me, and I'm leaving it there.
I think that was the right decision. We all need a little ogre at 0, 0 in our lives.
You
If I could
place it
take
at the
time to
ogre
ask
gym,
one more
though.
question. At one point, I was putting objects in and I forgot what I was putting in.
Hold
So
on,
I thought I'd be real slick. I popped over to Control 1 and heard what I was sitting on in my tree view. So yeah, that's right. I'm putting dirt in. I went Control 1 to go back to the scene. Enter no
Control
longer was
2.
putting anything in. I mean, sorry, I Control 2 went back to the scene, and then Enter was no longer dropping the object. Is that normal behavior, or is that?
So
a
when
little-
That is intended, yes.
yeah, when you go to Control 1 to go back over to look at the palette, it has exited out of the selection of whatever you had before, so the dirt. So you would have to hit Enter again.
Okay, I
reselect
figured
the
that
dirt.
out, but didn't
Yep.
know if that was planned or that was a weird thing. So I thought I'd bring it up.
So I was having a problem similar to that. Well, it's similar to your first problem, Art. Amanda, my grass and everything just kept stacking and stacking and stacking, and I could not get it to move over from 0, 0. I put the patch in. I restarted, and it's still doing it. And JAWS is not reading me more than, I mean, it's only announcing keystrokes.
Unfortunately, my workaround so far has been thanks to Stefan and the crew using NVDA most current version. The grid reads nicely.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
That's
that
also
does
my
appear to be
experience.
true. It does appear that NVDA responds better to the grid than to JAWS. We don't really know why. However, we were talking yesterday to some people, one person at Microsoft. We're gonna dig into that, but we couldn't immediately find why JAWS would react differently because the calls are the same. So, but it is true. The workaround that we found last night is specifically NVDA and specifically the latest version, because for whatever reason, Art even had a slightly older version of NVDA, and that also wasn't responding to the event. So it's my hunch in my head, I don't know for sure, is that we're probably using some call to the operating system that's very recent, and as such, JAWS isn't quite picking up on it yet, but NVDA is. That's a hypothesis, not even a theory, but that's my current hypothesis. So
That's our current experience. Yes, I can agree to it.
yeah. Okay. But let's jump in. It is 8 o'clock. So there's a couple quick announcements. And before we do any of that, I want to say, if you haven't downloaded the patch, there's a patch that's available now. It fixes a couple important issues that we all ran into yesterday. I think all the most significant ones that were kind of getting in the way of the lessons. It fixes the clone issue. So I'm going to put in Slack again the location of the, whatever it's called, the actual GitHub repository for the entire kit and caboodle. And when you grab that, I'll put it in Slack in just 1 second, you can open the clone dialog, and the clone dialog will actually then download all of the answer keys to your hard drive. And so I'm going to share screen really quick, and I'll describe how you do this just because it's relevant to everybody. And so I'm going to share screen, and I'm going to go ahead and delete my current copy of it because why not? because I'm just going to download it anyway. And so I'm just going to orally describe. Oh, I'm literally using it in a program right now. So hold on one second. So I'm just going to orally describe what I'm doing, and then I will get to, oh, come on. Oh, for goodness sakes. Okay, I could restart.
You gotta close Quorum Studio first because it's using the files.
It's using the files. Okay. So if I have the patch in and I open up Quorum Studio and I wait a moment for it to pull up, there's a button under the menu Team and then Clone. And when that appears, and with a screen reader, you press Alt and then you go through Edit, View, Navigate, Run, and Team. And then underneath it, there is a button that says Clone. And if you want the hotkey for it, it's Control-Shift-O. Control-Shift-O. Okay. When you pull that up, it has a dialog that pops up and it says clone, location, username, and password. The particular, what I want to do is I'm going to copy paste that thing that I tossed into the general chat, which is https://github.com/corf. That's the name of the nonprofit foundation that runs EPIQ, and then /epic.git. There's also a location field, a username, and a password. Leave the username and password blank. And the location field you can also leave blank, and it will choose a sensible default for you, which is the Quorum Studio folder. So I'm going to then, you can navigate to it, or I'm just going to click clone. And when you do that, it's going to dump a bunch of stuff into the console that doesn't get read automatically, because sometimes it can be a lot. But you can then go down and review it if you would like to go to the console and review that if you're a screen reader user. And on my end, it eventually said clone completed. So what happened there is it basically went to GitHub, it found the latest version of this software, downloaded the whole repository, and then put it on my machine. Oh, there's something in the chat. Oh, okay, cool. Somebody put it in there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to now open the file, because I tried to do this yesterday and for some reason it had a heart attack on me. And I'm going to open what the final answer key is for EPIQ. And when I say answer key, of course, what I really mean is that, everybody's going to be making their own game. So what yours is not going to be the same as mine, but that's okay. Mine is probably quite ridiculous anyway. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to build mine, and then I'm going to pull it up. So actually, I might need to share. I don't know if I shared sound, so I'm going to share sound. Okay, so here we go. And so I'm going to run my program. Now we all dance. Okay, so I'm moving a little guy on the screen. Part of what you're building will have accessibility features that you'll build, hopefully. I'm moving a guy up to try to find this little dude. I'm pushing him around, and then I'm pressing space.
Help, help! Evil Lord Bunnikins is rampaging across the countryside. If only I had 5 blue potions, I might be able to create an Uber potion to strengthen us.
When that happens, certain things appear on the screen and you can get information from them accessibly. I'm moving the little guy to go find the potion.
Epic, it's a little hard to hear you.
Oh, sorry. I'll stop talking.
And does this thing update automatically? Because I think that's what's happened to me.
Okay, that's all. Now, it sounds like you couldn't actually hear any of me, but basically the idea was this. A game popped up. There's a little character you had to go to, and you can get information from the game for accessibility. You can send events and stuff. Then some potions appeared on the screen. You had to go gather them. And then when you got them all, a monster appeared and said something ridiculous. Right? So
how did it do the chipmunk effect?
How did it do the chipmunk effect? So we'll talk about that in the later lessons, but I just used Audacity and then recorded some sounds, and then we made voiceovers for the game. So that'll be one of the later lessons is we'll be making voiceovers for our games and then sitting them in as triggers so that you can add voiceovers to your own games as well. So, and part of that with these lessons this year is building something like games is not just programming. It like involves art. It involves for screen users sound. It involves accessibility features. It involves voiceovers and scripts and all this kind of stuff that real game designers do, not just like hacking away on the code. So we tried to put in a mix of these things for the games for this particular year. Okay, so that's like the big picture of the different kinds of programming parts that we're going to have, scripts and triggers and things like that. And so the next thing that we'll do is we're going to go to the next lesson on the list, which is, and we'll go into our breakout groups. That is on the teacher track. We have done so far hands-on with Quorum Studio and build a role-playing game, which was in theory building a map. I hope people were able to get something put together for today. And then there is the next lesson is placing characters on a map. And it's the same distribution of groups today. It's going to be William Ali in the advanced group that's running the advanced group today. And then I am going to run the learner group again for today. And today is where we start doing some actual programming as well. So we suspect, although we don't know yet, we suspect that this is where the beginner group will go to slightly different speed than the advanced group because they've done some of the programming stuff before, but we'll play it by ear depending on what people need and what kind of problems we run into. So, okay. So at this point then, I will start putting people in groups just like before. And let's see, where is that button? Breakout rooms, okay. So we want, let's set up 3 rooms manually. And I need to assign, oh geez, now I have to remember who else is going over there. I think it was, let's see. I'm trying to remember who was in that group. I know it was.
I was there, Pranav.
Yeah, Pranav was there. Sarah Larkin was there. Steve Reparelli, Tim Lockwood, Timothy. I think you were there, right? And then Tyler Linder. Were you in the other group, the advanced group? I'm
driving, but yes.
Okay. Mike Code Amura was Mike Face. Which one were you in? Okay. Well, on Jen Gesso.
Mike, your microphone isn't working, dude. Mike asked to be in learner.
Could you put me in learner?
No problem.
Oh, did you need to turn it on, man?
Yeah, the mute button on the back got me.
No problem. Okay, I'm gonna open them, and if you got put in the wrong, in the wrong room, either feel free to change yourself and jump to whichever room you want, or just let me know and I'll move you over for anybody. It should happen automatically, I hope, but if not, just let me know.
Remember, learners, you just kind of stay in this room.
Yeah,
it's the advanced that pops over.
Yep.
Just reminding them in case they were waiting to magically disappear.
Stefik.
Yeah.
I was originally in the advanced group. It's Adam.
My bad. My bad.
It's all right. No big deal.
Let's see.
Well, see, Adam, after discussing last night, we decide, no, just kidding, man.
It's Jen and I also was in advanced.
Who just spoke? Is that Jen?
Jen Gesso, yes.
Okay, thank you, Jen.
It's also in advance, not that.
Oh, right. Okay, well,
I have a lot of faith in the advanced group and their ability to self-educate, but
this is the point, right?
No, I'll talk to you later.
Okay, see her.
Can you put me
They've
in
got
advance?
Co and Steve.
What was that? Is that Dania?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Danya's tired of seeing my face. She wants
Yeah,
to
I'm
go
tired
to
of Amanda. Put me in advance, please.
that's fair.
Yeah. Mhm.
Hashtag
Amanda?
tax.
Amanda?
Yes.
Are you ever going to go over that thing about how to incorporate your own art again?
I can, yes.
Yeah, well, I discovered after looking at some of the art last night, I think I want my own.
Gee, I can't imagine why you would ever say that. I can't imagine. I totally get that. That's legitimate.
It's not fun, just so you know, but I can go over that. Sure. Do you want to do that? Like,
Let's not do it right now because I know that there's other people that want to do the programming and stuff like that. But we can put it on the list or toss it in an office hours or something like that, just so that because it's not super programming-ish related, but like we can definitely go over that for sure. Okay. So, and also it'll take a while to go over that too, because like there's some moving parts with that particular system. So, okay. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to put the link to the lesson in Slack and on Zoom in the EPIQ Learner channel, or actually I just put it in general because it's the same for both groups. And I'm going to put it in the chat in, oh, Jill Dunaway didn't get put to the advanced either. That's my bad. Sorry, Jill. Okay. I think that's everybody that's asked for advanced. Okay, good. Okay, so, wow, it got quiet all of a sudden. How strange. So I put the link in there. Hopefully, oh no, I sent that just to Jill. Dang it. Okay. Okay, the chat has been there for everybody. It has everything in there. So first, let's kind of go over what we're going to do for this particular lesson. There are 3 learning objectives for this morning. One is to learn about compiling and running computer programs. The second is to learn about types and output, our first sort of like programming. Yeah, sorry, Tim Cluthy, sorry. So it looks like Jeremy's here. Where is, I think you can move yourself too, Tim. Why does it not show you? Oh, yeah, Tim, go ahead. I see, you were assigned, you just didn't go. It really doesn't matter to me. Didn't Jeremy stay with the learners yesterday? I thought he did. So go ahead and go to advanced, Tim, that's okay. Okay. Sorry, so 3 learning goals for today for this particular session. There is learn about compiling and running programs, learn about types and output, and practice using the scene editor just a little bit more to add characters. And we're going to do those in sort of opposite order. So the inside of a scene, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my little map that I made. And I'm going to pull it up from the answer key because that was sort of the whole idea of building this so that we had like little templates and stuff as we go. And so I'm going to share my screen really quick and then you can see my map. And inside of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my scene. And what is on there is a whole bunch of squares in a particular configuration that I made up. It doesn't really matter what it was. There's some water tiles, there's some stone tiles, and some grass tiles. And what I want to do before I do anything is I want to place a few characters on my map. And you'll notice, and you might think, well, wait a minute, but that doesn't make any sense. I've already got tiles on particular squares, but that's actually okay. So I want to show a couple things. So first of all, on my system, I'm going to press Control-1, and that takes me back to the tree view. And then I'm going to press Control-Tab to get to the palette. And I think everybody's done this at this point, but if you need help with this particular piece, let me know and I can toss you in a breakout room with somebody like Jeremy, and we can go through it. But now on my screen then, as I have my palette and there's primitives, characters, dungeon, and nature, and I can move up and down in the system. If you prefer that I turn my screen reader on as I say these things, I can, but it's sometimes easier to audio describe than the other. So in my particular case, I'm going to go down to Nature Summer, sorry, not Nature Summer 2D, but Dungeon 2D, and I'm going to pull out Big Monster. And the reason I'm doing that is no particular reason. Like, I just feel like it, right? You can add your own art, as Jackie was asking about, and stuff like that. But I'm going to go in and I'm going to place a character on my map. And when I do that, the character by default, when I press enter on the big monster, it goes to the scene view, and you'll notice that if you can see it, it's before this item. But the reality is that any particular 2D item can actually have a Z coordinate. And the Z coordinate is actually an indication of rendering order, so that you can see like which one is in front and stuff like that. So technically, even though it's 2D, you can technically have a Z coordinate, and you can technically move things back to front or front to back, whatever is that you want to do. But by default in the scene editor, if I make a monster, it's going to be in front of anything that I've placed previously. So I'm going to place something on my map, and I'm going to place it at grid position 2, just 2 over from 0, 0, just because. And I'm going to press enter, and my monster goes in there, and I've got myself a little monster. Now, when I'm done there, what I'm going to do, oh, I want my keyboard escape key is not working. Well, that's not good. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my selection by pressing escape. And then if I want to select that monster, what I'm going to do is there's a little cursor, and it gives me a similar cue as before. And I'm going to press enter over the monster. And if I can close this window, what you'll notice is that on my screen, it actually has the properties window up, and it'll say it through a screen reader too. But visually, it also has the properties window up, and it says Dirt 14. But the reality is there's 2 items at that point, and the way that I switch between them is to press tab. And so if I press tab, it says Gray Ogre. If I press tab again, it says Dirt 14. And so this is how I cycle between items when there's 2 of them on the screen. Okay. So what I want everybody to do is I want you to place 2 items on the screen, and I want you to do it in a particular pattern. And that is, if you place the bottom character at a certain location, like 2, 0 in terms of grid coordinates, I want you to place the other character at a place where it's always up, always to the right, always down, or always to the left. And there's a good reason for that accessibly, and that is because when we're building our game, we're not going to build in accessibility features yet, because at first we just want to like get anything programmed, and we want to start simple to hard. So as a first step, use the editor and like just press up a bunch and make yourself like 10 squares up or something like that, and place 2 characters. One is going to be you, the player character, and one is going to be the NPC, which is the, like a character you can communicate with. So in my case, I'm going to make that a different guy. Oh, wait, I don't want that guy. I want a green ogre. And so I'm going to put my green ogre up 10 squares or so. And then that's it. And so as the first part of this lesson, all you do is just place 2 characters and place them in a logically consistent way where you can find it again, like always up, that sort of idea. Everybody sort of get what I'm getting at? It's always so quiet on Zoom, so you never really know. Okay, stop sharing. Questions? Can I get that? Let's spend just a few minutes going through that to make sure that everybody can do it. And then we'll move on to the next part of the lesson. That's the first part. I swear, just that. Kathy says, my quorum says not responding. I crashed it twice last night. I have the new version in. That's strange. Do you know what you were doing when it crashed, Kathy? You can turn on your microphone if you want.
You know, I have a thing that I use the mouse, and I kind of use both. Do the mouse, do the arrows, and it seems like every time, I don't know if I confuse it, I go from the palette to the grid and back. That's when I get my blue circle of death.
Oh no. Yeah, if you have like a set of steps, we can definitely check it today and see if we can toss out another patch if you found something. I haven't seen it crash since the patch, but
yeah, I just got a not responding too. I was placing my player character, hit escape, and now it's not responding.
That's no bueno.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. Well, and
start of the day, damn you. Okay, fine. That's fair.
Well, no, it was like late last night when I was still messing with it. I was trying to delete some of the stacked grass that I had, and I would get down to 1 and then it would crash every single time.
Oh, really?
So I gave up. Yeah.
So there's another thing that we could do if you are crashing. There's a way that we can get a log of what it's slightly ugly. I'm not gonna lie. A log of what it did when it crashed, since it does happen sometimes if they're, especially if you push a patch in a rush way, like the day. Anyway, the way that we can do that is you can open a terminal. Oh, I don't want to force people to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Let me share a screen really quick. It would at least give us the information we need to solve this particular one. So let me share a screen. And
I mean, right now mine is hanging. It didn't actually crash yet.
Yeah, that's what. So any of these programs are built on the JVM, and that's actually what the JVM standard behavior in any kind of Java application. That's what it does. So I pulled up a terminal, and I can go to C program files, and so not that I really want to go through this because it's kind of ugly, but I can go open a terminal. Hey, Clay. Sorry, buddy. Okay. You can go to open a terminal by pressing Windows R, and then you can press CMD, and it will open a terminal. And then we have to browse to where Quorum Studio is. If yours is working for you, don't worry about doing this, but for anybody that it is crashing, you can do this optionally. And if I go to C program files, and then I press DIR, you'll notice that Quorum Studio is in this directory, and then I can say Quorum, what is that? CD space Quorum Studio. And instead of starting Quorum Studio with quorumstudio.exe, I have to type a magic command, which I'll toss into Slack, java-jar, and then Quorum Studio.jar. And if I do that, Quorum Studio will just boot up normally. Whoa. Oh, that's because okay. Oh my God. Okay, I see we're off to the races. I have to put in a command using the Java virtual machine that is on my system, which is, oh dear God, okay. ARE/ oh, okay. This is just lovely. Come on. How do I do this? Isn't it? Oh no, that's right. Okay, just 1 second. Come on. There is a way to do this, I promise. Okay. Okay, I have a really ugly command, and I'm going to dump that into Zoom. Because lovely. And where is it? You can go to that folder And so on mine, I can cd to that. And then if I run jre/bin/java.exe in quotation marks, and then -jar and then quorumstudio.jar, it will load it up and it will work exactly the same way. But if for whatever crazy reason, it decides that it doesn't like us and the programming gods are not in our favor and it crashes, excuse me, then it will provide some extra information for all of us and we can copy paste that to each other and we should be able to fix it. So. Okay, that was super convoluted. I apologize. But sometimes the best way to find these kind of bugs, unfortunately, is that it's inevitable when you actually start presenting it to people. This sort of stuff happens. It is sort of reality. Okay, so besides that, can I get some audio or information as to whether you were able to place 2 characters on the screen or on the map? Has everybody been able to do that? Is there any no's?
I'm having trouble. So
Would anybody like to be put into a breakout room to try to handle their particular map?
I have a question for you when you
do it.
Initially, when I was moving around my grid, NVDA was like reading. I don't know if it was reading the one I left, the one I went, then the one I went to, or the one I went to, the one I left. I don't know. So I thought, oh, I'll be slick. I shut down NVDA and brought it back. Now my grid's no longer reading. So,
of course it's not.
Shut down Quorum and try to come back in again.
That's probably the best solution. Yeah.
All right, I'll try that and check in with you.
There is sometimes when we restart NVDA, it'll magically decide to work again as well. So
maybe I'll try that one first. It's a shorter test.
Yeah, that's probably what I would do first.
All right, I'll check that and check back in with you. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. All right, any other thoughts or comments on getting those 2 characters in there? Has everybody been able to do that?
I have a comment. When for me also crashed twice when I was almost done, but I also noticed that the Windows laptop slowed down in the other programs and took a lot of the memory. So I wanted to ask you, what is the minimum amount of disk space that I need to have to write this program and see if I can clear some of that disk space in my computer?
Disk space shouldn't be a problem at all. It's only, I don't know, a few hundred megs, something like that. But then for memory, I think we've gotten it down to about 1 gigabyte, but it depends on what feature you're using of the environment. Things like the scene editor do take more memory than the others, but
super cinematic.
I suspect it depends on the machine, but like usually with the scene editor opening, I'm usually sitting around like 2. Right now I'm at 1.3 gigs. So that's what I'm at.
Okay.
It might be different for you, but that's not much. So.
Okay. And then another question that I have is that when, well, by the way, I love the tiles and the way that you can move them into the grid. That's wonderful. I also noticed that when you move the tile and you click on the tile, once it's on the grid, that a little window opens that allows you to change the certain numbers in there.
Mm-hmm.
And when I changed some of the numbers, I don't know, like I was trying to be lazy and I was trying to, instead of having one, convert that one square, that one little square that was into, like say, 5 squares by changing the number in that little information. And I noticed, I didn't know if that was what it crashed. And the other thing, it was difficult if I will not have vision, how will I know how to go in there and jump from one little window to change that numbers? Because it was, even with the mouse, was hard for me to know how to do it.
Yeah, so you can get there on Windows with Control+P, and that'll pull you to those property windows. And then they're tab focusable from there, so you can get around in that window.
Okay, control what?
Control+P, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then it should work with the keyboard. We actually wrote the keyboard support before the mouse support, so that should be working.
Okay, Control B.
Fine. Okay, any other questions before I move to the next part? Okay, great. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to figure out what our quest will be for our game. And so the idea here is this isn't really like programming, but it also kind of sort of is programming, because oftentimes when you're writing software, what you need is not only to know how to write code that does something, you need to know what your goal is for the software. So in my case, what I did for my quest was I spent a few minutes and I wrote a script. And you can do this in whatever tool works for you, Microsoft Word, Notepad, it doesn't really matter. But what I want to do next is I want to spend 5 to 10 minutes and I want everybody to write a script for their game. And here's all it is. At least for mine, and you can change yours or you can adjust it as you go later. But what I did was I had an NPC, and when the quest starts, which I haven't shown you how to trigger yet, but when the quest starts, that NPC is going to say something, and we're going to do it at first through output to the console. And so in my case, it's like something like help, help, evil Lord Bunnykins has done something, and there's 5 potions. I need these potions, something like that. But the idea is that you want this NPC to tell you something that you want to do, okay? And then that thing that you want it to do, that's what you're going to have to program, so you don't want to promise the world to yourself, right? So like in my case, it was collect 5 potions, which is very tractable. And going to collect something is a nice, easy task that you can teach the program, a computer, to do. So it's a good choice as like a first quest, a collection type thing. The next thing is, once your quest is completed, there's going to be a monster that appears. You don't have to do it that way, but that's the way the template does it. So there's gonna be a monster that appears on your game, and then you're gonna have to go do something with that monster on your own for the final lessons. And so for that particular part, that particular thing, you're gonna have that monster say something when the monster appears as well. And mine is mwa ha 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 ha, et cetera, in chipmunk voice, because I thought that was funnier. So the point is, you want a script and you want to write a few sentences for an NPC. And then you want a quest. And I recommend a collection quest, but it doesn't have to be, of some kind. And then you have to have a monster appear for your particular thing. Now, if you're not feeling creative, it's okay to just steal the same kind of thing that I'm doing, but you want to write it out in text and then spell check it, because you're going to copy paste that into your program later in the day. Does everybody have a sense for the next 10 minutes or so what to do? It's just like 3 sentences, that's all it is, but you have to kind of think out what it's going to be. And then we're going to start putting that into a program over the course of a week. Basically, we're making your vision for your program, and then we're going to slowly build it up through the rest of the lessons. Hearing no objections, I blame Amanda. Okay, I will do the same on my end. Build a new game. Sure, I can share screens. I'm literally just typing, so it's not riveting. But so I pulled up Notepad, and I'm writing, "Hey there, I'm a sweet-looking ogre. I love tacos, but lost them. You go find my tacos," or something. So I'll give everybody about 5 more minutes and then we'll check in. just to make sure everybody has enough time to write out something. If you finish ahead of time, feel free to type in the chat so I can make sure that we're not wasting everybody's time. Done. I see one done. I'm also done.
Dr. Stefan,
Yes, ma'am.
these walls with the flags on them, are the flags collectible?
Collectible. What do you mean by collectible?
Can you take the flag, can the character take the flags off the wall?
You know what? That's a good question. Let me see. Let me look.
No, it's all one image. The flag will not come off the wall.
Well, that's true, but I think there's a way you can trick it.
We do have a blank wall.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Yep.
There's a blank
You could
wall.
have it pop up to a blank wall.
Yep, that's how you would program that. Is if there's a flag, then when you would hit the flag, you would change that, you would remove that tile and then put the other one. There's an easy way to do that, and what you might consider doing is place down the tile and then place the other tile on top of it, and then you can hide them or show them, and I'll show you how to do that later. That's part of the lessons. There's 100 other ways you could solve the problem, but that's one. So yes.
Dr. Stelby, I am not a game player, so I never I just very few games in my life I had played. So I really feel more comfortable following you in what you did to gain the perspective and idea that trying to create something that I'm not sure where I'm going to. So I'm just going to follow your story.
That's not a problem at all. That's the whole, in fact, that's why I made it
yes.
like that, because I kind of figured some people are going to want to make their own thing. Other people are just kind of want to learn the programming stuff. Other people are going to want to do something else, and that's totally okay. It's not a problem.
Okay.
So, not a problem. Okay, it looks like there's a number of dones. Anybody need more time? Okay. All right. Well, why don't we go on to the next part? So, of course, everybody had their own probably. Mine said, hey there, I'm a sweet looking ogre. I love tacos, but lost them. Can you find my tacos? And then the tacos will magically appear. And then a monster appears. You then collect the tacos. And then it's a monster appears and says, well, hello there, warrior. I see you have found the tacos. Prepare to die. As monsters do. Now, of course, mine has a problem, and that is I don't have any default art for a taco, right? So one thing that you always have to consider when you're writing these kinds of games is what are the assets that you have? Now, ironically, you could actually change the description on the visual item, and then from a screen reader user's perspective, it would still say taco. But nonetheless, there isn't one. You could also add items to the palette and then find art of whatever kind you want, or make it yourself if that's your bag. And Quorum Studio by default does have a mechanism whereby you can add in both the art and the accessibility information. In fact, it requires both to even boot up. Like if you put in just one or the other, it'll just ignore the files and then go on its merry way. At least it's supposed to. So that's the idea. Any art you put in, any art asset has to be accessible. Otherwise, Quorum Studio basically rejects it. So, so in my little script, I might change it to something else, some other word that has art I have by default, or make my own art. And that's really the point I'm trying to get at. So let's go on to the next part of the lesson then. And that is in order to actually have a game that runs and does any kind of like output, we need to actually have types and output in it. And so for the next 25 minutes, we're going to be going over the concept of types and variables. Oh no. That's Josh Tubbs, right? Or an 8722. I think that is. Well, I think that's Josh. Okay, and he's saying his map got killed when it crashed. That's awful. Eek. I haven't had that happen to me, but I'm not sure. So that is horrific. Okay, let's keep going. But the did you get an error, Josh, when it did that? Because I haven't. I'm sitting here using it, and I haven't ran into an error yet myself. But
I thought that too, but I restarted my screen reader and everything worked.
Huh. Strange. Okay, so let's go to the next part, which is to look at types. And this particular lesson, we're actually going to do online in a browser outside of Quorum Studio. Okay. My 8-year-old daughter is also doing this. Hi, Chloe. And she says, wait, I haven't finished my script yet. So Chloe, go ahead and finish your script, and we'll keep going a little bit on types at the same time. Sorry, you may not have known that my 8-year-old was secretly crashing our meeting, but she is. She wants to make games too. So okay, so I have put in a link into the chat, and that is the types and variables tutorial. And we're going to do that one online. We're going to do it online for a couple reasons. Number one, not because it's necessarily better or worse, but one thing that the online system is really good for is you can dump in really quick snippets of code into it, and it has explanations around it. Whereas Quorum Studio, it's just like, hey, here's a blank page. Go do your thing. But the disadvantage of the online system is a couple fold. Number one is nobody really programs in just raw boxes. That's just not how you code. That's just not what people do. So it's harder because you don't really get any help. You don't get any like programming features or stuff like that built in. And so that's a thing. On the other hand, the online system is also pretty dang accessible. It's just in a browser. It's just normal HTML. So it's you know, it's probably not going to have weird crashes or funny things, stuff like that. So that we've kind of run into brand new tech. So I pulled up this thing. Has everybody been able to get to the types tutorial that I popped up? I hope. Okay. So inside of this types tutorial, the first thing to know is in any programming language, there's often a thing called a primitive type. And we'll get to what a primitive type in a second, but sometimes it's easier to know what kinds of them are there. And there's many kinds possible, but in Quorum, the 4 main ones are integers, numbers, Booleans, and text values. So primitive type, in the computer, a primitive type is kind of like a thing that the computer can store in raw memory in a very efficient way. So computers are really good at sort of like packing in numbers with something like an integer in a way that it can run it right on the chip really, really fast. That's what they often mean by a primitive type. And inside of these primitive types, each have certain kinds of operations you can do on them and certain kind of operations that would not be allowed or would not make that much sense. So for example, if you had integers, and I'm opening this up for a verbal discussion, what kind of operations might you expect a computer program could do with an integer? And you can either dump it into the chat or you can use your voice. That's your preference.
Addition,
Mathematical
subtraction,
calculations.
yeah.
Whole numbers though.
Yep. So Jackie and Art both said addition, subtraction, multiplication, stuff like that. Yep. And Art also said whole numbers. So does that sound right? Like an integer, by definition, mathematically, can't have partial values. It can't be 10.5. So that's why you need other kinds of primitive types. An integer is only whole numbers that's stored in a chip under the surface in a specific way. But then there's numbers which contain decimal points, and those are stored in a very different way in the computer. With me so far? Okay, now besides the primitive types themselves, and we'll get to the other two in a minute, there's another thing that we often want to do, and that is we want them to output to the screen, and we literally type the word output and then we put in a value in it. So I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm going to go outside of Quorum Studio. I'm going to go to this lesson, and I'm going to go to this little text box. And there's text above here, and that text says integer a equals 10, and then output a. What I'm going to do is inside of this text box, there are three buttons, save, load, and embed. We're going to ignore them. And then there's a button that says build and a button that says run. And in the text box here, I'm going to type exactly the code from above, integer a equals 10. And then I'm going to type output output A. And what this code does is, this code says, first, I want to make an integer and I want to put it in memory. I want that region of memory to be named A. That region of memory to be named A. Then I want it to be equal to, which really means it's going to set a value. And I want that value to be 10. So I'm going to say that again. I have a primitive type called integer. I want to make some memory where I can store it, and I'm going to name it A. Then I'm going to set it equal to something, which really means put something in that spot in memory. And this really does do this. It really does make an actual spot in the computer's memory where it stores this actual value. And then I'm going to put in there 10. Before I go to the second line of code, is there any questions on that first line of code that we've written? Is everybody kind of with me? Okay. So the next line of code says output, and what this is saying is this is saying put some information to the console. And then it's saying output A. So what this is doing is this is saying, go find the memory location that I told you about earlier, get it from memory, and then put it into the console. Now the console in Quorum Studio is actually the thing at the bottom of the screen, which you get to with Control+3. But on the web, when I have the console, I need to go to the run button, which you can do through the keyboard or the mouse. And when I click that, it pulls up a new page, which is kind of annoying, but it is what it is. And then on that page, there's a thing that says console output. And in my case, it says 10. So what I'd like everybody to do is to run that program and get it to run a simple output statement with an integer type, and just make sure that everybody can get through that. So why don't we do that? Take a minute or two. When you're done, maybe if you can, toss it in the Zoom so I kind of know whether I should give people more time. Yes, you got it, Amanda. Good job. Since you've taught this for a few years.
Only 7.
Only 7 years. Wow, you really taught it for 7 years?
This is my 8th epic.
That's crazy, dude. That is crazy. That's awesome, actually. It's funny because like it would be so much easier if we never actually introduced new technology, because like then there would be no chance that like there'd be any bugs, but what fun would that be, right? So it's fun to get new toys every year, even if it does make for a stressful.
We would still be writing just text-based rock, paper, scissors.
Seriously, wouldn't we?
Which is what I did my first year.
I remember. It looks like a bunch of people are going. Does anyone need more time? Or have questions? Either way is fine.
And I'm happy to hop into a breakout room with anybody who gets stuck, Andy, just so you know.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
I'm here so that I'm in the same spot when I teach tomorrow, but also just to help if somebody needs it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'll be in a room tomorrow too, so I'm happy to do this the exact opposite. So, okay.
The exact opposite. So you want to be not helpful tomorrow?
That's my job when I'm running the sessions, is to be not. Well, I'm not hearing any chatter, so I'm guessing people are sort of getting it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, good. So now let's, oops, I didn't mean to close that. So then what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about the other couple types. So that was the first one, that's integer, and that had values related to it that were whole numbers. And if you'd like to, I would encourage you to kind of experiment with it as we're going, if you'd like to. So like instead of saying integer a equals 10, you can say integer a equals 10 times 2. If you'd like, you can make a second variable, integer b equals 10, and then you can multiply them, whatever you want to do. But the point is experiment with those values a little bit so that you can have some understanding of what is allowed and what is not. One that I think is always interesting is give a shot to integer a equals 10 divided by 3. Give that a shot and tell me what the answer is, somebody. I'll stop sharing my screen there so that I can't give you the answer. But what is the answer? What is 10 divided by 3, counterintuitively?
Probably 3.
Probably 3. Any other responses? I hear a probably 3.
Or it would generate an error because it's not an integer, obviously.
Or it would generate an error. But which one is it? I want to know the answer, Jackie. Anybody want to venture what a firm response? And you can run it too, and then you'll know for certain. And almost every programming language does it the same way for a particular reason I'll get into. Should I sing the Jeopardy theme song? Would that be preferable? Do you sing, Jeremy?
Do it if you want me to, but no? Question mark?
Not required. Okay, well, so the answer, what is 10 divided by 3 in this weird world of programming, is in fact 3. Jackie was correct. And why? Anyone want to venture a guess?
Because it's rounding to the nearest integer.
Yeah, that's right. So it returns an integer. It can't return a partial value. So it returns the number of times that it can go into that thing as a whole increment. But suppose you want the remainder. How do you do that in programming? That has a different name.
Well, first of all, wouldn't that only round down? It would just basically kind of truncate the decimal values. It doesn't round up at all. When you say the word round, it could be misleading.
That's a good point, and I should not have used the word round. I should have used it takes the floor, basically, which is basically what it is. But yes, good point.
Using modulus.
Yes, and that is the correct answer. Does anyone know how you do the modulus operator in Quorum?
Percent?
You know, you would think so. So one thing,
Of course not.
yeah, I know, right? Exactly. So the funny thing about Quorum is that sometimes we use operators that are not the typical ones in a programming language. And I want to explain very briefly why we do that. Oftentimes, what we do on the Quorum team is we gather statistical evidence on word choices. So for example, if you conduct, which we actually did this, if you conduct a statistical experiment where you measure how intuitive certain words and symbols are, for whatever reason, the word mod does better in statistical studies compared to the percent sign for the concept of modulus. Now, why is that the case? I'm not really sure. But you see this a lot in Quorum. Instead of looping, having the word for, F-O-R, like it is in Java or Python or C#, we instead use the word repeat, which implies the concept of iteration. And so I'll try to point this out here and there as we go so that you have a sense of why some of these words, they're not really chosen arbitrarily. They're in fact chosen with statistics and human studies to try to make it a little bit easier over time. Okay, so that's the integers. So
Question,
yes.
Question, Andy. If you put in D equals 10 divided by 3 and you don't specify the variable type, it comes back 3. Should it figure out if it's a decimal, or what does it do there?
That's okay. So you did D equals 10 divided by 3. Is that right?
Right.
D. And then I'm going to run it just to make sure. Yeah. Okay. So what happens here is if you say the phrase D equals 10 divided by 3, there is a study that was run, and it found some evidence that you can leave off the name of the types in certain places in code, specifically not on method parameters. That's a whole other thing. But in this type of region of the code, you can leave off the left-hand side the word integer at certain strategic points, which is why Quorum allows you to do it. And so then the rule is, if you're at that strategic point, which you are in this case, if all of the types on the line are the same, it assumes it's of that type. So in this case, 10 is an integer and 3 is an integer. But if I was to say 10 divided by 3.0, you'll notice it gives you an error. And so it says, I didn't understand. I'm not going to infer the type of the right-hand side of this expression automatically. To fix this, change the declaration to number D. In other words, it says, if you have types of different kinds on a line and you're inferring, it's going to force you to specify it, even though technically speaking, Quorum could figure this out. It just chooses not to. It forces you to do it. And one of the reasons it does that is because human beings are, it's very difficult for humans to understand type relationships in programs. So what we do is there's a group, especially out of Germany, that's done a ton of studies on where you should have to specify these types and where you shouldn't. And we basically just follow that evidence. And this is one of these regions where it seems like it's okay to leave it off in that particular context. It's sort of not obvious that that's the case just from looking at the code, but that's my understanding. That's Stefan Hannenberg's work in Germany mostly. So.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so let's go down to numbers. Now let's do exactly the same thing. In this particular case, let's say number A, and you can do it in the same box if you want, equals 10.0 divided by 3.0. And then let's output A again. And these are numbers, so decimal points are allowed. So we would expect that we're going to get a value that is not 3, but 3 1/3. And that is what we get. 3.3333335 at the end. So why do we get it not exactly 3.3333333? It has to do with the way computers handle their stuff. They round in funny ways, and this particular version uses JavaScript and on the web, and so you get just slightly askew numbers, but they're pretty close. Okay, I can go on and on about numbers, but I suspect that that's probably that's probably close enough. Oh, you know what? We're running out of time, aren't we? Okay, well, let's go through the others really quickly, and then we'll go on to the next piece. The next one is Booleans. Booleans can have only 2 values, and that is true or false. So if I say Boolean A equals true, that's okay. But I could also say false, and then so I can output A. And we'll do combinations of these later, but that's okay. So if I say Boolean A equals true and then output A, then it's going to say true when I run it. And then the final one is text. And this is probably the trickiest one, although not that crazy. So in this case, I can say text A. And the important thing to remember is that whenever you have text, you have to surround it with double quotes. and that's required. It's the way that the computer knows it's text. So I have to say double quote, and then I put something in between it. And then I can type whatever I want except for a double quote. So stuff. And then output A. And if I run that, it will say whatever it is I wrote. And then in my case, it was stuff. Okay, and we're going to skip the part of this, this type thing that says type conversion. We don't need to do that right now. So those 4 primitive types, that's really the core idea. So are there any questions about that idea? Okay. So the last thing that I want to do then, before we go, and we'll, oh, go ahead. Was there a question? Oh, maybe not. Okay, the last thing that I want to do before we go is this section that says wrap up with a partner. And I guess partners are a little bit difficult online with so many people because I don't want to make like 10 breakout rooms. Is we want to see if we can actually take an output statement and dump it into Quorum Studio. And so inside of Quorum Studio, I have, if I close my scene.qs file and I go back to projects and I open source code, so that is with the screen reader, if I'm in the scene file, I go Control+1, and then I press Control-Tab to get back to the projects screen. And then in the tree, I go down to a folder called source code, and then I open that, and then I should find a file that says main.quorum. And when I do that, I have a source file, which actually by default has 38 lines in it. And it has a whole bunch of text.
Make sure you select it with enter to hop over to that file.
Good point. Sorry, I didn't say that. You're right. And inside of this file, there's 38 lines. There's a lot of comments and details, and I won't go into what all of this means yet. But what I want to do is I'm going to go down to an action named create game. So there's a line of code that says create game. And I mean, you know what? I might actually do this with a screen reader so that I can make sure people kind of get it. The way that I like to navigate, and there's actually some evidence that it's helpful for people that are using screen readers, is I like to navigate with the smart nav keys, which well, I usually do it.
Navigate expanded 4 of 8.
It is Control Alt down.
Collapsed. Code tab. Action main.
Okay, so there's a key called Control Alt for screen reader users. And actually I use it too as a sighted person all the time because I just find it very convenient. And if I press Control Alt and then up or down, it'll jump you to certain points in the file that are logical points because they're like regions of code. And what I want to do is I want to press Control Alt down until I get to
action create game.
And when I get to action create game, that's line 24. And inside of action create game, there's 4 lines of code.
Action create game. File set path, scene/scene.qs, load scene, end.
Okay, so there's 4 lines of code there. You want to find on line 27 where it says load scene.
Load scene, space.
And then I'm going to go to the end of that line.
Right, line.
I'm going to press enter. And then I'm going to tab over.
Command tasks. Zoom,
desktop.
I'm
not sharing screen, am I?
Select a window or an app. Share.
Meeting control. Quorum Studio 2.0.
So I'm on line 28. I've added 1 enter. And inside of create game, I'm going to type output space. And then I'm going to put a phrase.
Quote.
And then
double
with evil Lord Bunnykins.
Quote.
And before I move on, I want to make sure everybody can do that. So use Control Alt up or down to get to create game. And those keys are your friend. You're going to want those, especially for screen reader users. And then you've got 3 lines there, file colon set path, load scene. And then after the load scene command, you're going to press enter and you're going to type output and then double quote, and inside of that, you're going to put whatever phrase suits you. Obviously, the correct answer is down with evil Lord Bunnykins, but you can choose some other phrase.
Andy, what was the key command to hop around?
It's Control Alt up or down on Windows.
Ah, that's what I missed. Great.
Yeah, those are called the Smart Nav keys. And the evidence of those was done through Katie Baker's work. Then Amir Armali actually did his dissertation on that stuff. And then there's a couple other papers.
FaceTime Quorum
Okay,
Studio.
now, I don't know if everybody's gotten to that point, but now to run my program, I'm actually going to press Control R. That's the hotkey. You can also click the Run button, which on my screen is this visual play button, like an old, you know, any system. Or you can go to the menu.
Run expanded
click,
5 of 8.
you can go Run and then down to Run. But I always press Control R because I like hotkeys.
Code tabs tab control.
It's a nice mnemonic anyway. Control R is for run, Control D is for debug and stuff like that. So Control R.
Build successful in 0. Game window.
Okay, and you'll notice when I do that.
I got it, you're fine.
Okay, good. When you do that, it pulls up my game and I can get out of that. But then in the console,
Close. Quorum Studio. Windows expanded 7 of 8.
Close that and I go to output, which is Control +3.
Code tabs. Output tabs tab control. Building hands-on with Quorum Studio.
It has all the stuff that my program output, and at first it says it's building it.
Running hands-on with Quorum Studio.
Then it tells me it's running it.
Build successful in 0.17 seconds.
It tells me how long it took to build my program for Quorum. And then my phrase that I added for output.
Down with evil Lord Bunnykins.
Which is, of course, true. Down with evil Lord Bunnykins.
New share. Stop share. Quorum Studio. Exit NV.
So is there any questions? That is the end of this particular lesson. We'll take a few minute break, but is there any questions before we go to the next one? Are people getting it? Like, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, like you're lost, like you're doing okay.
This
It's always
Denise,
tough on Zoom.
this is Denise. I have a quick question. So
Yep.
when I save, shouldn't it ask me for a file name? Because it's not doing that. It just saves.
Yep, it's because it knows what the file name already is. So you're good.
Okay, thanks.
Amanda, could we hop into a breakout room?
I will set that up for you.
Sure.
That was Leslie, right?
Yes, sorry.
No problem. I think I recognize your voice at this point.
And Andy, I eventually will need help with error on my palette, but obviously not important right now.
Okay, yeah, we can do that later today. So okay, I've sent
One
you
question. Wait,
go
one
ahead.
question, Andy.
Yep.
Now I notice you're running in Firefox, or did you leave? And okay, I'm doing Chrome. Is there any time we're going to want Chrome to be saying anything?
Oh, that's a good point. This is something Kathy, because Kathy and I work together on another project. There is a weird thing. Chrome, I want to say, was it last December or was it a year and a half ago? They changed the way Chrome works. And that required any kind of audio, you have to have an actual click on the page before it will allow any audio to go through the page. And why exactly did they do that? I don't know. They just did. And they didn't call me. They never asked my permission. You know, it's funny how Google is. And because of that, if you use a specific say statement to cause speech to come out through the actual browser, it's tricky. You have to basically trigger it in such a way that you can click on the page before it'll output any speech. Otherwise, it'll sound like it's not doing anything correct. And that is actually the correct behavior for Chrome according to Google. But if you use other browsers, it reacts slightly different. So it is what it is. So just be aware. Yeah. I wish there was a way around it, but like their spec is pretty tight. I couldn't immediately figure out a hack to like force it to like force it, like maybe you could mimic like a key to like force press it or something, but like they're pretty tight about it. So They're punks. In other words, they made it so like they didn't want people to hack it, right? Like they're saying, no, you have to click on it, otherwise, yeah. Okay, other questions before we take like just a 2 or 3 minute break, and then we so I can get more tea. That's like that's the most important thing, and then we'll